Hi, I'm Nate from Nate Cooks, and in this video I'm going to show you how I make my version of cottage pie. The real main differences between shepherd's pie and cottage pie is the meat that you use. In this recipe I'll be using ground beef, so that makes it a cottage pie rather than a shepherd's pie. If you're using a lamb or a combination of lamb and ground beef, then you'd be making a shepherd's pie. The first thing I like to do is get the potatoes cooking so they're ready when I need them. In this recipe I'll be using 4 russet potatoes and will follow my basic mashed potato recipe. Once I have the potatoes cubed up, I will cover them with water, add some salt, and get them onto the stove to start boiling while I prep the other vegetables. For the vegetables we're going to be using 1 whole onion, 3 carrots, some frozen peas, and some garlic. I like to cut all the vegetables to about the same size so you have consistent bites. And in this case, because I can't cut the peas, I'll be using that size as the target. First up is the onion, and I'll run my knife through it pretty quick with a small dice. Then for the carrots, I'll take off the tops and tails and peel them before I dice them up too. You don't really have to peel them if you don't want to, but I think I do it out of habit at this point. And then I'll mince up 3 cloves of garlic as well. By now the potatoes should be done, so I check them by sliding a knife into one of them. If it goes in without a lot of resistance, then they are ready to be strained. After I strain them, I'll return them to their pot so they can release some of their steam. Now that I have the vegetables prepped, we can head over to the stove and get our cast iron skillet onto medium-high heat with some oil in it so we can get them all sauteed. I like to start with the onions to get them to soften up a bit more than everything else. I'll add some salt to pull out the moisture as well, which will help cook them a little bit quicker. I'll only cook them for about 3 minutes before I add in the carrots. I like to leave the carrots with a little bit of bite in the end, so I add them second. After those two have cooked for a few minutes and the carrots are just short of where I want them to end up, I'll add in the ground beef. I'll move the onions and carrots to the side to clear up some pan space, so that way I can get some good browning on the meat before I add it in. And I like to add the ingredients in this order so I don't overcook the meat or have to hold it in another bowl that I would have to wash later. And I'll continue to break up the meat as I cook it so I can get it into smaller and smaller pieces and stirring as I go. Like I said before, because I'm using ground beef, this is a cottage pie, but feel free to add lamb if you prefer. Then once it is cooked through, I'll add in the garlic along with the dried thyme, rosemary, parsley, and salt and pepper. I'll also add in the Worcestershire here as well, which gives a nice depth of flavor. And I really wanted to add tomato paste, but I realized once I started cooking that I didn't have any. So I subbed in ketchup and it seemed to work out just fine. So in a pinch, feel free to use it as well. I'll also add in chicken bouillon here too. And I've been asked why I use chicken stock instead of beef stock, and it's because all I'm really doing here is adding salt flavor. And because I'm leaving the fat from the ground beef in the pan, there should be plenty of beef flavor already. Once all of that has had a chance to cook for a bit, I'll start to add in some liquids. I'm using Guinness here, but you could use chicken stock or beef stock too. I'll add just a little at first to break up the fond on the bottom of the pan, and then once I have that cooked down, I'll top it all with some flour, which is what I'm using as my thickening agent. After I sprinkle it all over the top, I'll make sure to mix it in really well so it can cook off the raw flour taste. And I'll keep stirring and cooking until it looks something like this, where it holds together and everything is cooked where I want it. I'll also taste it here to adjust any salt and pepper too. Next, I'll add in the rest of the beer and stir that around and simmer it until it thickens up with the flour to where I want it. And while that's simmering, I'll also get the toaster oven preheating. I'll be cooking this at 375 using convection, but if you're not using convection, then 400 will work. After about 5 minutes, I'll mix in the frozen peas and stir it all until it's well combined. And then I'll push that pan off to the side and let it cool slightly while I make the mashed potatoes. I just mash them up and mix in butter, milk, salt and pepper, and a little bit of garlic powder and onion powder until they are fairly smooth and taste good. And some traditional recipes also call for an egg to go in the potatoes here as well, but I skip that step because I don't like my potatoes too dense. After those are where I want them, I'll bring back the meat mixture and start to dollop the mashed potatoes on top. And then I'll spread them into a layer using my offset spatula. And I tried to make sure that there's still room between the top of the potatoes and the top of the pan so there's room for expansion, and I don't get too much of an overflow. And then the last step before they go into the oven is to add the ridges with a fork. This step will help create those little crunchy brown bits of potato at the top and give it its signature look. And then it'll go into the oven. and then after 30 minutes, I'll pull it out and let it cool for about 5 minutes before I dig in. And this turned out really good. All the vegetables have a little bit of texture left in them, and there's just enough liquid to make a slight gravy, but it's not soupy. So I hope that you give this a try, and if you do, please let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.